data shows that remdesivir has a clear-cut, significant positive effect in diminishing the time to recovery. This is really quite important.
Remdesivir was the only drug of the 4 that had a death rate or mortality rate over 50%. It was actually 53.1% of everyone they gave that drug to died. No other drug had that high of a percentage of death other than remdesivir.
You can trust respected medical authorities. I believe I'm one of them, so I think you can trust me.
So Anthony Fauci used this drug to mass murder a whole bunch of innocent Americans. Then he told you, as he went on TV every night, that people were dying in droves from a virus, when in fact, the majority of them were being poisoned to death with remdesivir.
Wow. I debated whether to play that one because I can't stand looking at his face, but wow, never forget what they did. Never forget what they did. And it wasn't just making grandma die alone. I believe that they killed grandma and made her die alone. So that's where I stand with it. But then again, they did try to kill me. So welcome to the third night of Crime Victim Week. I want to remind everyone where we've been and where we're going. So let's start there with a little refresher. Okay, so on Sunday, we had a vigil to kick it off and a reading of names of the medical crime victims that have not been acknowledged. And we rolled out our proclamation, which so many of you are signing. I thought it would be great if we got, to 1,000 signatures this week. And now I'm like, it's going to be great if we get to 10,000 signatures because people are they want their loved ones recognized as medical crime victims, as they should be, because it was a crime. And so thank you for sharing the proclamation, and signing the proclamation, and some of your your very generous donations. You cannot imagine what that means to an organization this size. That is pretty much funded by the board members, which is fine, but we can do a lot. We've done a lot with little. We can do a lot with more, I guess. So I want to really thank you for that too. And then Monday, sorry, today is Tuesday. Monday, we talked about Leslie Batts, who's a widow warrior herself, did a great presentation on reporting medical crime. Your rights, your voice, your action. Who's who in the government zoo is sometimes hard to articulate or figure out. Just go to your capital and you'll be like, oh, this is a zoo. Who's who in the government zoo she covered. She covered somewhat about PrEP and fraud, but we're going to take a deeper dive in that today. And then she walked through federal laws and how you can report, and we put those templates out. So we had a great audience last night. We also put out this one pager of victims of medical crime. Know your rights, take action. Well, so, and then of course, here's the QR code. You can scan it to sign the proclamation for the victims of medical crimes. And please share that everywhere. If you would, please share that. Today, we also have decided that we are going, and I'm going to remind you this at the end, we are going to do a closing ceremony on Sunday and at 5:30 p.m. Central, and we are going to honor the victims. There are more victims being submitted for our medical crime victims wall that is very moving. If you go out to our website, betrayalprojectusa.org, you can add your loved one. and see who is there. We're going to do some closing ceremonies, a reading of the names again, including the additional names, and we're going to talk about where we go from there. And tonight, though, we have Dr. Margaret Aranda and Laura Bartlett, who is a great team, and we are going to talk about the I do not consent form.com at the end, because this is very important. If you do not have this filled out, you need to, because it works. And so we're going to talk about that, but we are going to talk about some things here about the topic is beyond the ER door wasn't murder. And so first, I want to invite Dr. Aranda to just tell everybody a little bit about you, although everybody knows you because you have the Dr. Margaret show. And so go ahead and tell people a little bit about your experience.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you've done, Gail and Mick and everybody else behind the scenes. This is a great effort, and it's so respectful for all the people that were lost, and not just in the hospitals, but we recognize also in nursing homes and other places as well. So my experience, I graduated USC Med School, USC there, and then Stanford Anesthesia, Stanford Critical Care. I was one of 3 doctors in the nation to get that critical care position. And I was chief of anesthesia at the Philadelphia VA and 3 departments at the University of Pennsylvania. So what brought me here was Governor Newsom trying to pass AB 2098. I organized a press release outside of his Sacramento steps when nobody was doing anything. So I got targeted and had medical board agents show up at my house wearing guns on holsters and black suits. So that kind of threw me into where we are today, which is speaking up for informed consent, being a patient advocate, and empowering people, especially with the I do not consent form, because I sat on the ethics committee, I sat on blood transfusion, committees, and as chief of the department, I had access to the chief of staff and the medical director, as well as a lot of administrators in the hospital. So I'm really pleased that I could bring my hospital experience in to help people with what is going on once you go to the ER, the OR, the ICU, organ donation, labor and delivery. So I appreciate being here, and thank you for allowing me to share my perspective, Gail.
Oh yeah, you have a broad range of. I just want to say, if you aren't following Dr. Margaret Aranda on X, and we're going to show you her Substack, The Rebel Patient, as well. I always recommend the Substack because it is packed. Everything that you call me and ask me is on her Substack. So that's why I send you her Substack, because you're asking me and it's probably there already. And I don't have as much information as she does. So, but also follow her on X, because her and Laura do a lot of X spaces, a lot of shows, and they have special guests on, and they have some of the most interesting breaking stories that you could imagine. Like there are so many times when I'm just like working away at work and I'm listening to as much as I can, but I always go back and watch them recorded, because the topics are things you're not hearing everywhere else. There's such a unique perspective. You can go on X, we all go on a lot of spaces and we hear the same thing talked about over and over again, not on hers. So just if you're not following her on X, follow her on X. Now, Laura, follow that up and tell them about you.
I can't. That's really hard. Thank you for putting me in a real conundrum here.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking. I didn't think it through, Laura. I didn't think it through.
Well,
I can do it. So, Laura,
do it.
Laura
hate talking about me.
She hates talking about herself because she's a very humble person, and I've known Laura since 2022, I think. 2022, and so Laura has worked endlessly and selflessly to save lives. I always say to people that there's a special place in heaven for Laura Bartlett because she
Let that be a good special place, not
a good special
Put that
place.
on a
make
t-shirt.
it a not a special place.
Not a street
Please
sweeper.
qualify what that special place is.
Laura, she's going to have to shine her halo
It's like in
now.
the back of the bus.
I mean, when we talk about the hospital hostage helpline, right? That line, that hostage helpline has saved so many lives. She is the one on the other end of that hotline, and she doesn't fail to pick it up, and she reaches out if she needs help, and that's her hotline. That's it. It's that phone, and it's
That's
been
who I
that
reach out to.
phone since the start. And so so we, let's buy Laura a new phone. No, I'm just kidding. We'll try.
Maybe you should have multiple, like incoming call areas,
Right. And they'd all go for
1-800 Laura, 1-800 Laura 2.
dial Laura Bartlett.
Not
But
a bad idea.
But the people that call that hotline, and because we're going to talk about the I do not consent form.com, which is amazing. And I've seen it work. And, we've certainly had people use it and had great success. A totally different hospital experience than they had. But the hospital hostage helpline is when people call that line, they are like you and I, anybody who's listening who has lost a loved one or is a survivor, the state of chaos that you're in when you need help. And Laura has always been a calm voice on the other end of the phone, giving good direction and good, stable kind of feedback. It's very easy to get on the phone with somebody and they're panicked and then you're more panicked. But that's not the case when you call that hotline. You have that calm, she has that calm demeanor. And so I think that has helped hundreds of families. That's one thing I love about you. You are pure grace under fire. And so
I love that.
and then the I do not consent form is very much so that they don't have to call you. You use the I do not consent
Right.
form so that you don't have to call the hospital helpline, and it works.
That's the idea.
If you
Don't call me, people. No, call me if you need me, but if you just later we'll talk about, the form that kind of talks for you.
yeah, did I hit all the
That's what's so important. Just jumping in here, that's what's so important is the need for advocacy. The system is so complex, intentionally so, and the system you have to navigate through that is very tedious. And we've talked yesterday about the lack of informed consent, and I can see in the years of nursing how the education has dwindled down. And so you get into a situation and you're not aware that there's a lack of informed consent. There's a lack of, the advocacy that we used to have. And that's why it's so important that we have people like you, Laura, like you, Dr. Aranda, who are in the community, because people are in need. They need that helping hand. They need the advocate, and they're not getting it in the hospital.
That's right. That's right. So as you're listening tonight, for those who are watching, if you could like and share this, subscribe and share. That's what I'm going to say. Like, subscribe, and share, so that everybody knows we're live. We're live on Facebook, Rumble, and X. So it's intentional with Mick on Facebook and Rumble, and it's the betrayal _PROG on on X. So share, keep sharing. We want the maximum amount of people to hear this information, because tonight I'm going to pull up as soon as I take this off. All right, I am going to pull up your Substack.
Beautiful.
So the Substack is called The Rebel Patient. So it's called The Rebel Patient. Make it a little bit bigger because I want people to see this. This Substack is packed full of things you need to know, not just about the protocols, but about, I mean, you got stuff about cancer, everything on there. So, all sorts of things you need to know. So let's take me through what we're going to talk about tonight. So we've got let me just knock it down here a minute. All right, so we're going to talk about, I've already gone through the schedule. So the agenda today is we're going to talk about evidence-based medicine versus incentive-based. If I hear one more nurse or doctor tell me that they were practicing evidence-based money, they were, I will scream, because it was all incentive-based.
You were right the first time.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell them. I'm like, it was incentive-based medicine. That's the new medicine. That's been the medicine actually pre-COVID, because some of the protocols for cancer were incentive-based. The shots
2009.
Yeah.
2009, that was the first incentive-based care when they did the electronic medical records.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first one.
And then we're going to talk about the violations of standard of care and all of that. And we're going to talk about PrEP. We're going to talk about the protocols, the good, the bad, and the criminal, because not all protocols are bad. Sometimes you need a good protocol. Like you need an enema. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes you do need a good protocol.
Sometimes you need a good enema.
So
there you go. There you go.
That's the old-fashioned medicine. You're sick, you don't want to go to school. Okay, let me get in. No, I'll go to school. So I like never have a doctor or a nurse for a mother, right? Because you'll be going to school more than you think. And then and we're going to talk about being prepared. What happened beyond the ER doors? A lot of people don't want to talk about what happened beyond the ER doors. They can talk about everything COVID related, especially until they get to the ER doors, or everything hospice until they get to the ER doors. And then we'll talk about, I always loved this saying that Laura Bartlett would always say, be prepared, not scared. It's very catchy. I always liked it and used it. And then how to advocate. You should. Right. That would be a great career for you, Laura. All right. So
I'm still trying to figure it out what I want to do for.
Yeah. All right. So please and subscribe to The Rebel Patient. So where do you want to start?
We could just, I think if you scroll down right there where you have my article that I did, I interviewed you on your harrowing hospital hostage situation, right? Saved by Huckleberry Husband, oxygen and budesonide. So I think that you speak from experience. I mean, I was bedridden for 12 years after a traumatic brain injury, went to lots of doctors who didn't know what was wrong with me. And so, but I think that experience made me stronger. It made me more able to help people. I'm just glad you had a good husband there, Gail. And it brings us the importance of not only having the I do not consent form, but talking to your caregiver, your next of kin, and making sure that they know what you want and what you don't want, and that they're going to be willing to fight for you. Maybe they won't have to bust in through the security doors like Brad did, but you know what? I can tell the difference in the ICU if I have an intubated patient who would need something, and the next of kin is standing there just flabbergasted about what to do and what not to do. I'm like, didn't they ever talk to you about what they wanted? No. Well, you can imagine. You've got to look at that person in the eyes and you've got to say, I don't want remdesivir. I don't want a blood transfusion of unvaccinated blood. Whatever it is that you don't want, you have a right to get that even if, you're out of commission. Now, that I do not consent form only works when you're conscious and you competent and you can make your own decisions. But even at that, you need help and you need backup. So make sure that your caregiver can fight for you.
Yeah, I agree with that so much because the interview that you did with like our story, we definitely didn't know about the form, and I don't know if Laura had it out there in 2021, but I know it would have been a completely different story for us for a couple reasons. For one, it was basic things like having to take a round of remdesivir to get my priest in, which never should have happened. The DNR orders as well, but also there was a doctor early on, about day 2 or 3, when my daughter had first contacted Dr. Richard Bartlett. Yes, they're related, brother and sister. And but she got a hold of him and he was advising on the budesonide. And there was a doctor who was willing to prescribe the budesonide every 4 hours, 1 milligram every 4 hours. And but he told us flat out, he said administration and the pharmacy is going to kick it back.
Right.
And they did. It took me, like, we had to fight and negotiate with the administration. And I do think that if I had that form, the administration would have just let the doctor would have been protected to do what he wanted to do, which was prescribe budesonide the way he was going to prescribe it. So this form isn't going to piss off doctors. It's going to protect the good doctors. And then they would have just given me the budesonide. And I do believe budesonide saved my life. So
Go.
Well, can I say this too, Gail? I'm just kind of jumping in here. One of the things that I think why it makes such a big difference with the I do not consent form is because it actually does provide a written directive. There is a clear notification to the providers. So it can't be denied. They've been put on notice. There's a record if those wishes are ignored for any reason, and that makes a big difference when you're in the healthcare system. I think Dr. Margaret would agree with me. If a physician has that and their patient is handing that to them, they're going to be more apt to go, okay, wait a minute now. I've got something here on the chart right in front of me.
And I need to follow the instructions. But let's go into the incentive versus, because we will go into deeper into the I do not consent form, but the incentivized based medicine versus evidence based. One thing that our victims hear a lot is, well, we had to follow evidence based medicine, even though what they were doing, most people were dying. The evidence was there that they were dying, not be, you know what I mean? The centers of excellence should have been set up with, all the doctors who didn't lose a patient, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have a point there. Exactly.
I don't think a lot of people evidence means.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the right thing to do because the patient will have a better chance of surviving or doing better. And then there's a thing to do, which is to get paid for what you're doing, no matter what the patient outcome is. So we're talking about either doing the right thing or getting paid essentially to do the wrong thing in a lot of cases. And we know that, for example, the remdesivir or ventilator protocols are continued to this day, right, Laura? I think you were aware of a 13-year-old who just died after getting remdesivir just a couple of days ago.
Right.
So, this is a healthcare
Still
emergency, ended on May 11th in 2023, and here we are still doing it. So it really should be, what does the best available science show will actually help this patient? And so we see these protocols got initiated. The CARES Act was initiated. It gave a 20% Medicare add-on payment for COVID diagnoses. And here you see here this new COVID-19 policy for inpatient prospective payment system hospitals, long-term care hospitals, and inpatient rehab facilities due to provisions of the CARES Act. And this is Section 3710 of the CARES Act, which includes the 20% add-on payment for COVID-19 diagnoses. I took a screenshot of the actual website that is there. They did that yellow part in there saying that EUA ended on May 11th. And then you've got waivers, regulatory flexibilities, national recommendations, remember, we weren't doing a lot of before then we were allowed to, hospital at-home care, and here we go. There's the actual hospital payments for COVID-19 cases, and you see how ventilation, some hospitals got $30,000 for putting patients on a ventilator.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And that 20% add-on really gave people the incentive to put everybody on a ventilator. In fact, so much so that I had one patient tell me that they told her mom, we're just going to put your mom on a ventilator to rest her for a couple of days, and then she'll be better, and then we'll take her off the ventilator. Well, guess what? That is not science-based medicine. They just made that up because they got paid to put them on a ventilator. Nowhere do we ever in our entire lives tell somebody, you're going to go on a ventilator so you can rest. It's absolutely disgusting that was even a sentence.
We heard that over and over again. It's even on our deadly hospital playbook, where they said that very thing to so many patients, so many families. We're just gonna give their lungs a rest. The other thing, do you remember when the HCA doctors came out, those whistleblowers came out, and they said they were told to put people on ventilators because it was a closed air system and it protected the staff, which was the most crazy thing.
Yeah.
But you know what
Right.
else? You know what else
Yeah.
we saw and if that person, there's a couple people we saw this in, and if they're listening, hopefully they'll send their medical records in and put their stories in at betrayalprojectusa.org. We've talked to people who, in their medical records, when they got the medical records, the hospitals used ventilation as a restraint system because the patient was trying to leave, and
So they sedated them and ventilated them so that they couldn't leave.
yes, so that they couldn't
Wow.
leave, and they couldn't, or they could. One of them, like, he kept getting up to go to the bathroom. It's crazy, right? And then, like, Roland Cerna, both of his brothers were killed here in Texas. A nurse whistleblower came to his brother's funeral and told them the doctor Googled how to vent somebody before he vented, and she put in a complaint at the hospital and was reprimanded. But then they made a policy for to tell doctors to practice ventilation on elderly.
My goodness. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I worked in a teaching hospital. I'm sorry. I worked in a teaching hospital, and I think that was the thing that was the most scary, is because you would have people and they would, your intern would practice. And so, that they do use terms, and I just want to bring this out because Gail, you said the term, they were told to rest their lungs. One of the things that I have heard a lot, and I wanted to just kind of mention this, is the language. When they started incentivized based health care back in 2009, that was the first time when the Affordable Care Act, they put in the electronic health records, and the CMS paid out monies for that. Yep, right. And what they said was incentivized base care was to improve outcomes, reduce costs, and reward quality care. They use this language because they want to kind of soft pedal that in. And I thought about that as you're talking. They're doing that, they do the same thing over and over, where they're using the language and they tell people we have to do this, kind of like the incentivization, where they came out. We know they used over 175 billion for provider relief funds. You talked about the 20% increase, the layered reimbursements. And you know what their reasoning, their rationale, their words, they said it was used to stabilize the system. I think we need to kind of break that down and break through that language barrier, because they put things out there and then they soft pedal it in. That's how we've gotten to this point in time in healthcare, is because they actually just kind of soft pedaled it in since 2009.
Yeah. And look,
Chris-
they got paid. They got paid for it. Looking at this map, you can see Texas, Oklahoma, a couple of other states there in red had the highest reimbursement. Over $2 billion went to Texas and Oklahoma each. And then all those other states got more and more money for these this COVID incentives. And I'll add to what you were saying, Mick, and thank you for your input, that a lot of patients were put on ventilators after they had been dehydrated and left with starved because they were not eating. So their blood pressure was low, their heart rate was fast. If you intubate somebody and put them on the ventilator, it decreases the filling of the right ventricle of the heart. So it really makes the blood pressure go even lower. So then you add remdesivir, boom, you're going to be having problems with the kidneys, because now your organs aren't going to perfuse, and you're going to add the liver and the brain and everything else, and you're going to die. So it was a setup, in my opinion, for the ventilators to be initiated, not right away when they first came into the hospital, but only after they were dehydrated and starved.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
And, Christina here said her husband, they broke his jaw when they vented and never told. I hear that so much.
Oh,
I've
so
heard
the
it.
anesthesiologist had to go in with a laryngoscope. It's a metal blade kind of thing. And we lift the tongue out of the way and put the breathing tube in. And sometimes if it's especially maybe a large head, a big neck, or there are difficult airways, quote unquote, you can pull so hard that you can dislocate the jaw over there where the TMJ is, the mandibular joint and everything. So I apologize for that. I'm very sorry that happened. That just, I also heard that anesthesiologists, they were using so much propofol, what Michael Jackson died on, that anesthetic, plus paralytics, plus, benzos like midazolam and etomidate, those kinds of things, that some people were intubating without paralyzing people. And without doing it properly with the right sedation. I mean, you can do that in some situations if their pupils are gigantic and they're not breathing, they're not going to know what's happening, but that's not the safest thing to do. You have to be in a controlled environment. And then you add the PrEP Act, which further shielded the doctors from liability, right? And that just reduced accountability for outcomes.
Yeah.
So one thing I was very concerned about when initially the whole thing started off, we knew something was amiss, the way that they were trying to sell us on a virus. But when different companies retooled to make ventilators, and then I remember my husband, having been an ER nurse who dealt with ventilated patients and ventilation before, he was like, all of these companies who never made vents are making vents. They don't know what they're doing. They've never made them. It's not their specialty. And then all of these people who don't know anything about venting patients or caring for vented patients, he said, this is a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm. Well, it takes a lot of expertise. There are a lot of things that can go wrong. There are different settings on a ventilator. It depends on whether somebody's breathing on their own or not breathing at all. There's a SIMV function, intermittent mechanical ventilation that's spontaneous, allows them to breathe normally, versus assist control, which is for paralyzed patients that are not going to be breathing on their own. Then you've got PEEP and pressure support, kind of like
Yeah.
the CPAP, right? That CPAP is PEEP and pressure support that assists the breathing with each breath and keeps the lungs open so they don't close all the way, so the oxygen doesn't go down. There are a lot of parameters that need to be taken in consideration. And you know what, I knew there was something wrong when in Los Angeles they were going to supposedly be building hospitals off out of Long Beach on barges, right? And I
Yeah.
applied for a job as a tele ICU doctor where I could just read the monitors and, provide some input and watch out for things. Never got a call back, never got an email back. And I was double board certified at that time, both anesthesia and critical care. So I knew something was really wrong. And they didn't need me with my high skills, right?
Right.
Something.
Well, they had the ships too that they sent to New York, and they had, the center that they built out, and it was empty. It was, they didn't put people in there. So they spent all this money and they didn't utilize it,
Yeah.
so you knew there was something not right. But I just wanted to mention to you too, we also had people who told us that they had broken noses from the intubation. Yeah.
Yeah, Peggy.
That's ridiculous. That's
Peggy Springer.
okay. So the only way that I see that happening is if they were unable to go in through the mouth and they had to do a nasal intubation, maybe with a camera or a scope. Otherwise, that would, maybe they broke the septum or something. They were being too aggressive, again, done by somebody who didn't know what they were doing. But let's just say
I'm
here
surprised
on
at
the
this point.
Mhm.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I said, I'm surprised at this point we're not hearing of, and people were being intubated and coming out with broken arms or broken legs.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I know there were people who had, wounds, open wounds. There were people who told me that they, got their loved ones and they had, decubitize on their backsides. I mean,
sure.
that didn't come from them. So, there was a lot of harm that we saw that happened, throughout the documentation. And that's the thing, is that we see it, that's a pattern that's happening over and over and over. I mean, that you can't deny that.
Well,
It's
and there's
New Jersey, California.
Yeah, there's nowhere in anybody's repertoire that would let a sacral decubitus ulcer form. And this happens, for those who don't know what it is. If you're laying on your back, your pelvic bone can basically erode through the skin and show, and that can be infected, and that needs to be cleaned. That's an obvious sign of poor nursing care. But just moving along here, look what the PrEP Act did. It shielded people from liability. The nurses didn't want to go in the room. Nobody took care of the patients. They let them sit in their stool and their urine. They rewarded diagnoses, drugs, procedures more than patient survival. And then here they stopped, they started being guided by dollars instead of by science. So we've got the official PrEP document on the screen there. Thank you so much, Gail, for that. This is the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act, for medical countermeasures against COVID. This was issued March 10th in 2020, effective on February 4th of 2020. It got lots of amendments later on. There's a link to it there, but there's a nice big long screenshot for you there. And here is what happened. Yeah, families had to watch their loved ones get treatment that deviated from long established standards of care. And supposedly, willful misconduct was an exception, but it has been very difficult for anybody to prove. Have you seen that too also, Gail and Nick and Laura?
So I've seen that, and that's one of the reasons why I call it the PERP Act and not the PrEP Act, because it has allowed. First of all, I don't think anybody should have immunity. I don't have immunity. You shouldn't have immunity. Like, nothing should be complete and utter immunity. And yes, there are things that say willful misconduct was an exception. You're right. It's a very difficult thing to prove. In some ways, you have to prove somebody's mindset, right? But I believe that a lot of the things that happened were criminal not just misconduct, but actually criminal. For example, all of the records who have patient unable to sign when the patient was absolutely able to sign, that's fraud. All of the records where the DNR was changed, that's always been illegal to force DNR. Like I experienced that where they told me I was a DNR and I kept saying I was a full code. And that type of thing is another piece of willful misconduct that I think borderlines on criminal is the number of times we've seen either video, audio, or just the recounting what happened, where somebody was on the phone with their loved one, and the staff came in to vent them, took the phone, and they could hear their loved one yelling, "Give me back my phone, give me back my phone."
Terrible.
If you can yell, you do not need to be vented. My husband would say that all the time to them. He would
Right.
say, "Take off your mask." And I would take off the mask and I would speak to him, and he would say, "I will not give you permission to vent her. Her voice is strong. And I will never give you permission to vent her unless I can come up and examine her myself." And so that type of
Excellent.
thing, I believe, is very much those types of things, right, are illegal, because there are
Right.
times when vents save lives. I'm not saying nobody should ever be on a vent, by all means.
Right. Agree.
Right.
And
Right.
here we have, if you thought willful misconduct was an exception, not only was it difficult to prove, but the government wanted you, if you were injured, to go through the countermeasures injury
Mhm.
compensation program instead of a civil lawsuit. I mean, there's links to all that, but
Yeah.
really, honestly, that's not a good mechanism that has done anything.
Yeah.
And we're reminded again that justice begins with recognition. So we have to distinguish between care that's driven by evidence and care versus financial or institutional incentives, because patients deserve medicine that's rooted in good practice and not reimbursements. And then we've got violations of the standard of care. So
Yeah.
that, we've talked
Mhm.
about a lot of those respiratory care guidelines, remdesivir, just for people, I think almost everybody knows what that is, but that the study that you were talking about on Ebola that Fauci was well aware of down in South Africa, not only did it result in
Yeah.
53% death rate, but they actually stopped this study because so many people died. And they took it
Right.
out and then
Yeah.
they restarted it. That's a remdesivir result. That trial is right there. So early and aggressive intubation was a problem. Initially, they were restricting steroids or delaying them. We knew by 7 to 14 days you had to go on steroids to stop that pulmonary
Yeah.
phase of COVID. And actually, I never used dexamethasone. I liked methylprednisolone better
Yes.
because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. People were not giving patients antibiotics. They couldn't even get a Z-Pack of zithromycin. They couldn't get doxycycline. So, this was Obama's 2014 executive order, and then that 2015 National Action Plan. So many people came to me saying, my doctor won't give me an antibiotic. Well, you don't have to prove a bacterial infection, because by that time they'll be septic and that bacteria will go into the bloodstream. So you want to do that early and not late, and then you've got that liability shield via the PrEP Act that was terrible.
So
So
let's
yeah.
talk about the standard of care here for a minute, because I often hear people say, which is that this is incorrect, guys. If you're saying it, they say nobody died at home. People did die at home because the standard of care was that they would go to the doctor that they trusted forever, right? And then they would oops, sorry.
You're
They
good.
would go to the doctor that they trusted for 25 years or whatever, and the doctor would tell them to do nothing, go home. And like my friend Valerie, she died in her sleep that night. and because her oxygen was pretty bad, and she didn't get any of the drugs
Wow.
that she needed. But so people did die at home, but um but this standard of care, it was almost like they intentionally had the wrong drugs, dexamethasone instead of prednisone, albuterol instead of budesonide, Tylenol instead of something. I mean, like, because that depletes your glutathione.
Mm-hmm.
No vitamins versus vitamins.
Mm-hmm. And
We
how embarrassing too was it, Gail? Like, since when are our doctors so stupid in our country that they have to tell people to stay home until their lips turn blue, that they can't do one single thing for people while they're at home? They can't order
right.
vitamin C or vitamin D or tell them to take zinc or, anything.
Well,
Just give them an antibiotic. I mean, let alone the ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine issues.
So I had you asked how stupid they could be.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a patient on the inside. Um, this is how stupid they be. No, it's like, I'm
Okay.
going to tell you. So they have spent a long time dumbing down our medical staff, for one. So I do think that there's some that are just so dumb. I think that there are some, I think it's like one third, one third, one third. One third are trying to do the right thing. One third are intrinsically evil and they enjoyed harming us because we were unvaccinated or whatever. And then there was this one third of just absolute ignoramuses in the medical field. And they're so conditioned by their tools. And we always say tools make fools, right? Tools just make fools. And so there was a nurse who was going to give me something for my fever, right? And it went early on, and the system was down. You know how they scan you? They have to scan your thing, and then they have to scan the little pill, and then that has to match, and then they give it to you. And she was like, the scanner doesn't work. And I was like, yeah, but like you have the pills in your hand. Like you could just give them. I was like, you could just hand them to me. And then there's these things called pencils. Pencils, they still make them, and you could write it. I was like, you could write it down and put it in the system later. And she was like, no, I can't. No, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't just give you the thing you needed. And it's not a narcotic or anything, like, right? So she couldn't do it. That's how they just couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out how to work around this bar scanner, like they were buying fruit. It's like I saw so many things like that where it was like, no, I'm sorry, I won't be thinking for myself today.
Yeah.
Because the system told me to do this. AI has told me to. And have you seen the latest thing, Dr. Margaret? The doctor or nurse on the screen and the pole, and they just roll them into the room, and the doctor or nurse is working from home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Virtual integrated care, Vic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want Vic taking care of me.
I've seen, the rolling doctor going down the hallway at the hospital too, an AI doctor checking on patients while he's sitting back there somewhere eating dinner or something. I'm not sure, but I feel sorry there. Teresa is saying to Gail, my dad couldn't get the ivermectin. A lot of people had a lot of trouble with that. But I'll say, if you can't get ivermectin, the next thing to get is Nigella sativa or black seed oil. It's the same thing. And take that with zinc. Get your vitamin D, your vitamin C. Drink green tea, 3 to 5 cups a day, has EGCG in it. Take it with zinc.
And I'm gonna make a plug here, and we have it on our resources page. Resolvex, they're brilliant. They have they call it petmectin, but it's the same. This is it. It's the same ivermectin I get from where I'm not supposed to buy it in India, but it's the same stuff that I get.
Well, I'll tell you too, Gail, a lot of people are ordering the 1.87% ivermectin horse paste.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it comes in a long tube. It has little clicks, for one little click, it'll deliver about a tablespoon. That's about 4 milligrams per click. So if you know your dose, it's based on weight in kilograms. So 150 pound man is 70 kilos times 0.2 milligrams per kilo is about 14 milligrams as a dose. So a lot of people are just going to Tractor Supply, buying it on Amazon, 1.87% ivermectin horse paste.
I couldn't quite bring myself to do the horse paste. However, I did do it because I had
a lot of people do.
I had some kind of skin thing going on, and I put it on, and it was gone like that.
I have skin cancer right here. It's used for skin cancer, psoriasis, eczema, acne, arthritis, joint pain, gout. I mean, the list goes on. Cellulitis, skin color changes, bruises, bumps, bites. A lot of people use it now just topically.
They use it forever for kids with lice. So
absolutely.
And then they also have on ResolveX. We have a code to get 10% off, but they also finally started doing hydroxychloroquine for pets and me. Like, because we would write them like, hey, wouldn't it be great if my dog could get some pharmaceutical grade, because I want the best for my dog, hydroxychloroquine. They have doxycycline and fenbendazole on there too. And it's just, they tried to shut them down, but because they put pet in front of the word, like there's nothing anybody could do about it. And then they didn't have, they did shut them down for like a month because the packaging didn't have the little paw print on it. But now they have the little paw print on the packaging. And so nobody can stop them. So very clever. It's very clever. People will find a clever way to get it out there. And so,
dogs and horses are more sensitive to contaminants than humans are. So actually, a lot of people are of the opinion that those animal products are more pure than a lot of our human products.
Yeah. So I think it's important to, to have that. Ivermectin, that was the thing that, we're probably going to get kicked off Facebook, Mick. Sorry. But they acted like you were asking for eye of newt when you were in the hospital. Matter of fact, I said that to a doctor because she had all the tribal stuff right all over us. It was like, I didn't ask for eye of newt. I asked for ivermectin.
But this is being run by the NIH. It was being run by CMS. It was being run by CDC. They didn't want any of that going through.
But here's the problem
they wanted countermeasures. They wanted things that were more expensive.
Yes, they did.
For whatever reason, you could have done ivermectin at $1 a day, or you could have done or less, or you could have done remdesivir for $3,000 for 5 days. And when you look at that, I mean, and I'm just gonna make this one point. When you're looking at incentivized based care, they're not looking at what is best for the patient. It really comes down to what data have we gathered? What quality measures are we trying, metrics we're trying to fill for CMS? And then they're looking at everything based on a fiduciary outcome. They're based on outcomes. And that's what they're doing here. And they're not necessarily good outcomes for the patient. And it's like a financial outcome.
And you mentioned the NIH. Here's the big problem I have with doctors and nurses saying we had to follow evidence-based. With the CDC or the NIH wouldn't let us use ivermectin. Ivermectin was on their website along with remdesivir. And I showed the doctor that when I was in the hospital. Ivermectin and remdesivir were both listed on the NIH website as possible treatment options. But they chose remdesivir. What was the difference? Ivermectin was saving people. Remdesivir was killing people. That's not evidence-based if they're using remdesivir. That's the opposite of evidence-based. That's like, I'm going to, not look at, but the fact that the 3,000 versus the $1, that, and the incentives to boot because they knew remdesivir would lead to the next thing that they got paid for, the vent. It would lead to death. when in the world have you ever seen hospitals getting incentivized for death? That's crazy to me.
You know, the other thing that goes right along with this, I was at the University of Pennsylvania there on the East Coast when we switched from a paper chart to an electronic chart. And really, the electronic charts are just there for billing. You know, you get the codes, whether it's a low sodium, a high potassium, you know, respiratory distress. You've got all these codes and all these
Right.
different ones add up. And then it's billing. It's for insurance. It's not for patient care. It's to
That's
it's
right.
so that insurance can make more money and the hospital can make more money.
That's exactly right. That
I-
was the biggest thing that they would have us go through when I was doing outpatient auditing. That was the biggest audit, was your billing. Did you get all your charges in there? Did you get that charge? Did you get that charge? I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
would sit there and they would go through it.
Well, we would
It's
get lectures on how to do it, and we would get spoken to if we didn't do it right.
That's right. We
Yeah.
would be penalized.
I
We
think
sure would. You sure would, even to the
so.
point
This
of
isn't
your
Grey's
penalization.
Anatomy.
Yeah, Grey's Anatomy,
This
right?
isn't Grey's Anatomy or House or any of those other shows where they just stress all night,
Yeah, out there.
worried about
Right.
the patients, and they bring the problems home, and then while they're cooking dinner with their boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, they're talking about the cases that day that were unsolvable. No,
No.
Teresa
They aren't.
said, "Where have you seen hospitals incentivized for death? Germany, World War II." It's actually
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. But I can tell you, you know, just if it's okay, Gail, moving on to my forensic view.
yes.
So
Let's
we
do
take
that.
all of that, right, with the billing, et cetera, and you've got these medical records showing that the patients deteriorated really rapidly once these protocols were initiated. Especially, I will put in great big exclamation points in the ICU. Once they were ventilated, they started dying. And so they had this one size fits all algorithm based on financial incentives. Doctors who spoke out against the deviations faced professional pressure or loss of licenses, while the families were left in the middle, you know, questioning what happened with the death of their loved one when we were supposed to have good hospitals in America. The government lawmakers sought to punish doctors. For example, the California's AB 2098 that I protested against. And then, you know, when these protocols were overriding clinical judgment and causing harm, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, oh, I put somebody on the ventilator. Oh, like 80% of them died. Like, how many ICU board certified doctors who were in the hospital were started screaming that patients on ventilators were dying? Not many.
Right.
And there's some big names out there that could have said more, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So the
I
ones
agree.
that had loud voices, you know, some of them were medical experts, pathologists, and hospital administrators. So, I mean, I stood out there and I put myself in, you know, I stood on my hill. We had Dr. Cameron, Kyle Siddell, who is a whistleblower. He's the one who argued that standard ventilator protocols were harming patients.
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Kirk Moore didn't want to give the shots. He gave saline with patient permission, got dismissed later on by Pam Bondi, but he spent time in solitary confinement, put a doctor in prison. And this is what Governor Newsom said, you know, he accused Florida of being on a witch hunt after doctors. And he said, you know, if they can come after your doctors, they can come after you.
That's right.
And you've got like an ER doc, Dr. Mary Talon Bowden. She, you know, complained quite a bit. James Thorpe did for babies and pregnant women. You know, you've got some doctors that stood up and out. But honestly, if you look at the population of doctors in our country versus the population who stood up and became medical freedom doctors, we're only about 1% of the population,
That's
not
right.
even 2%.
Yeah.
So
That's
they're,
right.
you know,
What are there like? I think there's like 1 million doctors in America, and maybe 1,000 stood up. Maybe.
yeah, there's,
Yeah.
you know, if you count the chiropractors and the naturopaths, which a lot of people are going into naturopathy
Yeah.
or other, you know, alternative medicine things, I think we're going to see more of that in the future. I think a lot of us doctors are telling people not to go into medical school, but go into go into naturopathic school or something along that line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's very a very good idea, because I know the trust factor, right? The trust
Yes.
factor before we get into the protocols, we talked about the prep, but a little bit, but before we get even into the protocols, the trust factor now for hospitals and doctors in general is so low. I can tell you, they tried to kill me in December of 2021, and I haven't been to a doctor since they tried to kill me.
There you
I've
go.
not been to a doctor, period, since they tried to kill me. I told Huckleberry he better know how to treat everything from a gunshot wound
Right.
to the sniffles, because my husband's my doctor.
There you go. I mean, and that's the beauty of the I do not consent form. We don't have to a lot of us believe in God, right? That God can heal and God can lead and guide us. But I also feel like God gave us the I do not consent form through the hospital insider
Gave us
lawyer
grace.
JD, because if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have anything, because nobody else has come up with anything in the whole entire world.
Yeah,
So,
and
He gave us brains to think. He
right,
gave us brains.
and he
He
gave
put
us
that in
apricot
you.
seeds. I mean, he gave us natural things.
That's
He gave us
right.
oranges, right? I mean, he gave us food from the trees, etc. But
Yeah.
what I think upset a lot of people, here you've got this PrEP Act and nobody gets accountability. They get away with murder.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so
Yeah.
important. We did that session yesterday on reporting a crime. That's why I think it's so important to get 10,000 reporting a crime, or as many as we can, reporting fraud, reporting this, reporting that. You may not be able to do anything about remdesivir, right? Or, I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything about remdesivir. So you got to go with all the other things that have always been illegal, that are outside of that PrEP Act, that, the DNRs and the fraud and all these things. And so that's the only way you can get any accountability, because let's face it, the government will start to prosecute when they're the victim if it's fraud, right? Like, I mean,
Well, yeah. I mean, what essentially happened with this no accountability issue is that it allows it to be perpetuated and still exist
Yeah.
even today.
Right.
And not only that, so you've got that we're saying that this is criminal territory when you've got known harms that people get paid to do.
That's exactly it. I like that where it says the PrEP Act effectively turned medicine into a non-liability zone when decision makers face zero consequences for bad outcomes. Patient safety takes a back seat to protocol compliance. Justice begins with recognition. And so that's dead on. That's exactly it. And
Mercenaries for hire.
well, that's pretty much it, right? And so and here's the thing, what we said, I think it was the first night or yesterday or something. It's been busy, the days. This has been
They blur. I know, for me
are a big
too.
blur. But these things have stripped hope from victims. There are millions of victims of medical crimes, not just before COVID, because you have hospice, you have nursing homes, you have all these things. I'm learning about different types of medical crimes that I didn't even know existed this week, where people are reaching out and go, hey, let me tell you about our organization. Let me tell you about this, so it's way broader than we ever even expected, which, I love those calls, by the way. Keep them coming, because I want to know about I'm one of those people. I want to be able to see everything that could be coming at me.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to
I
tackle
agree.
it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's absolutely one of the jobs of anesthesiologists, is to see small, subtle changes and predict something before it happens and then prevent it from happening. But I'll say one more thing in this regard, because I don't want people to think that, doctors, I mean, I'll just say this. Doctors have the highest suicide rate of any profession. It's almost always been that way. Gail, I'm so curious to know if any of you have heard of this. I remember back in 2022 hearing reports of ICU directors who had an office in the ICU were shooting themselves in the head, one after the other. I think because they got guilty for what they were doing and not doing, and couldn't live with themselves. So I think that there was a doctor shortage. There'll continue to be a doctor shortage, and it's much better to stay healthy and not need a hospital at all. But if you need one, get the I do not consent form.
That's right.
Have you heard of any doctor suicides in the ICUs?
I haven't. That's interesting.
No.
I read that.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. That happened 100%.
Like recent. Yeah,
No, this was back
I
in
believe
like
it.
2020, 21, 22. One case I know of. So I know if it happened in one hospital, it happened in others. They don't hit the news. They don't hit, the death announcements and all that.
Wow, I could imagine that though, because I do think that there were doctors and nurses who had a conscience and couldn't live with what was happening. Some of them blew the whistle. I can see where there would be a suicide rate on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because even in my, even in my own case, there were nurses that just flipped a lid about some stuff that was going on, and like not being with water for 7 days. The first few days, I didn't even have an IV going. Like there was an IV in my arm, but it wasn't. And I remember a nurse flipping out because it'd been 4 days that thing had been off. 4 days.
Terrible.
And she was like, this is never to be off, because I was just deteriorating. But there were nurses, I know a nurse in Florida who, if patients were serious that they wanted ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, she'd bring it every day under a cookie.
Some people were bringing the lotion in and rubbing their family members with lotion, or that somebody snuck some pills and like inside the laptop. They were doing it. They were sneaking stuff in. Yeah, baking them into cookies. Yeah.
So and here's the thing. So we're talking about protocols here in a minute. The one thing about our survivors, and there's not many of them, but the survivors, every single survivor has something in common. Someone or something interrupted the standard of care.
There you go.
When it comes to, so imagine that something had to interrupt how the hospital was doing it and do something different or stop it. And that's the only thing that made you survive. For us, it was my husband storming the ICU, my daughter and my husband, changing the course of what happened. But something interrupted the standard of care.
Yeah.
That should tell them everything. If a family member can save their loved one in their living room without all the fancy equipment and the money and the this and the that, but they can't do it in the hospital, you're doing something wrong.
I'll say I had like 3,000 patients over COVID. I prescribed a lot of ivermectin. Later, when the variants came around, hydroxychloroquine seemed to work better at day 3 if the ivermectin didn't work right away. And out of all those patients, I had 3 that went to the hospital. 2 of them succumbed. I couldn't get them out. Remdesivir and ventilators, both of them. The third one, I literally happened to have a conversation, because I call ahead for my patients. I'm sending you this patient's coming to the ER. All he needs is this and that. Please just do these 2 things, then get him out of there. Well, they ended up admitting him, and that's what everybody should do. If you need a doctor, you should get a doctor to call ahead for you, because you'll already be in the electronic medical record. You'll get VIP'd in, you'll get seen before everybody, and you'll make their job easier, so they'll like you. But at any rate, the one that I got out, I was able, when the daughter called me, I was crying because he was being restrained and everything else. I could see the writing on the wall. I called down to the ER doc, the same one that I had admitted him through, and said, you remember me, I called you. He waited in the parking lot for like 14 hours in the ambulance before he could get in, because they were so busy at that time. I said, please, he needs to get out. They're trying to restrain him. They're not giving him his medications. Can you please walk up there and get him out? Thank God she did. But there you go. We had to step outside the protocol, and it took a human being intervening and finding another human being to advocate and get something done to get them out.
Mm.
That's so crazy
Yeah.
too. Like,
Scary.
That's
really,
why you have to have advocates. You really have to be prepared before you go into the hospital, because when you go into the hospital, if something goes wrong, you think the system is going to protect you, and then you have to reach out. That's why I think it's so important to get that education out, like what you're doing on your Substack. I think it's very important for people to understand that, you to have that person, to have that support, that gives them kind of a structure, a clarity, a protection before they walk in the door.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so important for people to understand that, if you have questions, if you have concerns, you need to reach out to Dr. Margaret. You need to reach out to Laura, reach out to Gail, reach out to me. Get things settled before, because that's what I'm seeing. I saw a lot of people, once they got into the hospital, then you're vulnerable and you're sick, and you had your loved one taken away, and we're fighting so that this doesn't happen again, but the precedent has been set. So now we have to have a way to stop that from happening again.
Exactly.
Mick, you're right. It's almost, we have preparedness for everything else. We have like tornado and hurricane and typhoon preparedness or whatever. You need hospital preparedness. You need to have a plan.
Well, that's a tricky thing too, because like I lived in the hospital. I know the hospital backwards and forwards. I know everything that people do. I know how people think. I know respiratory therapy, the nurses, the charge nurse. I know the structure. But if you're only in there because you're sick and you've never been in there before and you know nothing about hospitals, ventilators, oxygen, blood gases, there's so many things that you'll never know. However, I can tell you this too. I had a patient whose daughter was in an ICU on the East Coast, and she was intubated on a ventilator. The doctors told her she was septic. This happened over 3 or 4 times. It wasn't the only patient was told the exact same thing. So I said, okay, I want you to walk over to the ventilator, tell me those settings, take a picture of it, tell me the settings. And nowadays they tell you that you have to agree that you can't take any pictures in the room. So I'm like, just tell me the settings then. Give me, send it to me on my cell phone. So I had her, I established a couple of things. I said, okay, I want you to, when the next time the nurse comes in or the doctor comes in, either put them on the phone or ask them yourself. Why? Yeah. Okay, so I gathered all the information and made her ask this really smart question. Why is my daughter on a ventilator with 100% oxygen if her blood gas shows a PaO2 of 150? Like,
oh my goodness!
Can't you knock down that FiO2 down to like 80% or 70%? Can we wean her off the oxygen? Guess what? That was a Friday. By Monday, she was out of the hospital. 3 days later, the doctors were flabbergasted, she said. I'll tell you over and over again, they were telling people they were septic and that they were going to die in 3 days when they didn't even have to be on 100% oxygen. So they lie.
Right.
That's all I could say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Can I tell you this one story? Because talk about lying and talk about people who need advocacy. I just want to tell you this one quick story. I'll make it really quick. There was a lady. She's here in Oklahoma, Deborah Davis. She was advocating for her husband Jimmy. And she wasn't guessing. She wasn't emotional. She knew the law. She had cited the no patient left alone law. And that law is in Oklahoma. It exists so that it can protect the patients. It ensures that they have an advocate present. She was told by the hospital, we are not following that law, Mrs. Davis. So she didn't stop. She tried again. There was the right to try. Remember, President Trump passed that, the federal law. Everybody had the option when they were facing, life-threatening illness. Everybody was being told they were DNRs, right? They were unsurvivable.
You're going to die. You're unstoppable.
You're going to die. And so she said, I want the right to try. And again, they said, no, we're not doing that. So I just want to kind of pause there for a second, because that is the moment where everything becomes real to me. I mean, she knew the law, she spoke the law, she's advocating, and still she hits the wall inside the system. Her husband died, Jimmy Don Davis. And so, when people ask and they say, why does advocacy matter? This is why, because there's a gap. And I don't think people understand. There's a gap between what the law says and what is actually happening at the bedside. And I just wanted to bring that story, because as we're transitioning, we're talking about, the standard of care, and we're talking about the I do not consent form. I just want people to understand, most people assume if something goes wrong, the system's going to protect them. And what we're seeing over and over is that you are going to need protection yourself inside the system. And that happened here in Oklahoma. And I just wanted to bring that out, because it's so true how we need to have a model of us standing together side by side, utilizing, evidence-based care, patient-centered care, and not this incentivized where you become a commodity to be fixed, or a product to be taken care of.
That's right. All right, let's make up some time, because we got a little ways to go here.
Okay.
So
And here I just want to mention here that Katie said, I heard at least monthly of doctor suicides.
Yeah.
You're going to definitely hear that. And I'm sorry, Teresa, again, you were on the way to do that before the nurse pushed something on your dad that caused a heart attack. I'm really, really sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about beyond the ER now. Yeah, the OR, ICU.
Yeah. So we did we talk about the good, the bad, and the criminal difference between the different?
Yeah, we did. We were saying how the criminals profit from harm while getting away with it, accountability because of the PrEP Act. Yeah, so that whole liability thing is sort of a bad thing. It's better not to need the hospital and to stay away from the stuff that they try to give you. And that gives us, once they admit you to the hospital, you might need the OR if you had an appendix, right, that needed to come out. You might need the ICU if you're having oxygen problems, labor and delivery as well. I think we have a video coming up here also. But the I do not consent form, Laura Bartlett, that should have maximal benefit, and that still holds true today. So if you go in a hospital and you say, I don't want a vaccine, and that gets deposited to the medical record so everybody sees it, and it gets handed down from the CEO's office, boom. I don't believe that you will ever see this happening to you. And you could go ahead and play that video, Gail.
This one right here?
Yeah. I just want to say, I'm sorry. This one's a different one. It's not the lady in the hospital. Here's a, it's fine. This is a little flub that the newscaster did. He must have known that they were euthanizing people in hospitals.
Yeah, this one's shocking. Turn your sound up, people.
Worrying health officials who call mass vaccinations the only path to a return to normalcy. Almost 4 months into the vaccination effort, providers are beginning to run out of people who want to be immunized.
Look at that.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh, but come on.
They ran out of people.
But here we have human beings. They're just degrading them, targeting them, isolating them, and for the purpose of killing them, euthanizing them without their consent.
Yes.
And humans were being degraded, targeted, isolated, and euthanized. And I do believe that they degraded us and isolated us to strip hope from us, because people without hope don't fight back.
Exactly. I think they also preyed on the single people, elders, the disabled. We've got Danielle Alvarez, Rebecca Charles's daughter, who was given pharmaceutical overdose of fentanyl by IV, bolus, and patches. We have people given, high dose lorazepam, multi-drugs with Precedex, morphine, midazolam. The UK, they have the midazolam murderers.
Yeah.
So they were following the same template throughout the world, actually. And then, the patients were starved and dehydrated, priming them for remdesivir, which caused kidney failure. And we have John Bodwin. I interviewed him on an X Space. He's been showing lots of, deaths that
Yeah.
occurred and nobody talked about it and you can't find it, but he digs them up. People didn't get antibiotics. They were prematurely intubated. They were told they needed a ventilator when they didn't, lied to because of rest when there's no such thing. That's morbid medical malpractice. They were vaccinated. We've got a whistleblower saying at Riverside Community Hospital in California that their ICU patients that were unvaccinated got a COVID shot without their consent.
Oh, I
That's
believe
a
that.
I've heard
1,200.
that.
It's a gigantic hospital.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yep.
John
Yep.
John Bodwin's got a great podcast too.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
he
does. He's
does.
definitely a soldier, a very, very good one. And then
Great
we know, families were locked out, and poor Andy Katsanis, right? His father, Dr. Gus, the nurse actually gave him something IV, and then he immediately coded and died right in
Yeah.
front of him.
And
This
she took off, and we're very good friends with Andy. He lives near
Oh,
us.
that's sweet.
And Andy, let me just little story about Andy and the I do not consent form. So Andy's mother, she was very traumatized by the death of his father, right? So it was an absolutely devastating, um, devastating event, and so she never recovered, and she recently in March she passed away, and so we were there with her and Andy. And Andy, he had to take her her liver was failing and all of these things that were going wrong with her. And she got to a point where she did not want them to do anything to her anymore. She was very done. And Andy's mother was a very well put together, fancy, lady. And Andy is such a great son. He went and he was going to go do her nails. He stayed with her every day. Me and Huckleberry came down there, and thank God for Marsha Joyner's book Betrayed by Hospice, because we were able to, we knew things. And it was interesting because my Huckleberry, I can just imagine what kind of a nurse he was, because when she started to get upset or panic or whatever or get agitated, him and Andy would just hold her hand, stroke her hair, and he said this is the thing that nurses are not doing anymore. They just go right for the medication. They don't worry. They don't think about how can I comfort somebody without medication. And she passed away, but Andy used the I do not consent form.com that Laura has.
Beautiful.
And it was an entirely different experience than what his father had. And the thing that happened was Andy was able to protect his mother's wishes, protect his mother, advocate for his mother. They treated, he even had the caregivers read it together.
That's nice.
He had them all there reading the I do not consent form to make sure that they all understood. And it was, I felt like it was a bit of a more healing experience for him. But his mother did pass away, and her funeral was beautiful, and Andy made it beautiful. And so he, extra prayers for Andy. We love Andy and respect him so much. But his father was a good man. He was a good doctor. He helped a lot of like vaccinated kids and different types of people. He was a wonderful doctor, and his mother was a wonderful woman. And so I just wanted to share that experience with the I do not consent form, because that was one of those things where it was a completely different outcome for him.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Being
Thank
treated
God.
humanely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll say just, because his father was a doctor, I did a little digging and I interviewed him. That's my article there on Substack that you see. I looked at the books behind him on the shelf and asked him to like do a close up on the video and show me more of his books. He had so many books on cancer, and he had a
Yes.
big, gigantic
Mm.
microscope also. So I think he was doing live blood analysis, and he was probably treating things that they didn't like he was curing. And he died in the hospital that he helped establish. So I believe they wanted him dead.
Yeah, his
Mm.
dad helped launch that hospital, and he was the
Yeah.
first baby born in that hospital.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a lot of
That's just
lot
tragic.
of it is very
So
tragic.
tragic. That's
Mm.
And
terrible.
so and you can find out more about Andy's story is on our website, under the real stories, betrayalprojectusa.org, and he also has a website called deathatbaylor.com.
Yes, that's a very strong website he has.
And so Andy, if you're watching, we love you.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
So that's
Absolutely.
yeah. So you did interview him.
Yeah. And then we have, the problem with some of these patients. I know Rebecca Charles, she was asked if her daughter could donate her organs, not her heart, because it had failed. But there were so many people that, they had added insult to injury when they were asked, there's no such thing as brain death. It's a lie. I have Dr. Paul Byrne, who's a neonatologist from way back in the day who invented ventilators, who's going to be coming on our X Space on April 28th. And he knows that there's no brain death. You have Dr. Heidi Klessig coming on to
Thursday.
talk about the same thing. Yes,
Yep.
exactly. So here we have, a couple of videos of people that woke up or they were moved and survived in the operating room, including TJ Hoover, Misty Hawkins. Her heart was still open, etc.
And I think I won't play these just for the sake of time, but I
Yes.
want people to go out to the Rebel Patient to go out. We're putting this in the links everywhere. We'll share this everywhere, but go out and watch these videos because I can't think of anything. We're going to actually have a brain dead survivor on Thursday with Dr. Heidi Klessig. And I can't imagine that's the thing that nightmares are made out of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But I do, you know what I do want to show that just this little first like minute because this honor walk thing just
Yes.
blows me. It's such gaslighting when they know darn well that the patient is not dead. I'm just going to play the first minute of it, y'all. Bear with me on time.
Tell me about that day.
We were there saying our goodbyes. That was it. We felt like we were doing the right thing as a family, and they were trying to kill him. We had made the decision to remove him from life support because we were told, he was brain dead.
What you are watching is the Honor Walk. It's one of the most revered traditions in a hospital. It's when family, friends, and staff all pay their respects as someone is wheeled off to give the ultimate gift, donation of their organs.
Nobody is dead when they go in there. And you're going to hear more about that Thursday, but that is absolutely terrifying. The honor walk is a bunch of gaslighting, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It is a bunch of gaslighting to make you feel good
Feels like
about
a ritual.
Yeah.
very
And-
much so. Very much so.
And in
Yeah.
short, I will say they would not want your organs if you were dead because your organs wouldn't be any good. The reason why they want them
That's
is
the
because
thing.
they're good and they would only be
Right.
good if you were still alive.
Yeah,
right.
think about this,
That's
guys.
right.
There's an entire medical crime victim group of people who are brain dead survivors, organ harvesting survivors. That's
Exactly.
insanity.
That is
Oh,
insanity.
and in China,
It is.
they do live organ harvesting to euthanize, kill their political prisoners and religious opposition
Yeah.
leaders. And Americans are going over there to get organs because you can get them in 2 weeks.
That's right.
There's laws out here preventing Chinese organs from coming to the United States, but why would you need that if you weren't doing it?
Yeah, and
Well,
the sad
and-
thing is it's not illegal in every state.
Exactly. We have 14 states in the United States that have legalized euthanasia.
Right.
It's crazy.
That's
Wow.
It is. It's insanity.
Again, yeah, I do not consent. I want to show this one.
Yes, here's the labor and delivery. So we talked about the ORs and nursing homes have the same thing happening. Here's labor and delivery. So had this lady had the I do not consent form in her hand before going to the hospital, and or the doctor would have called ahead of time to protect her a little bit, probably this would not have happened.
Yeah, this is horrifying to me, and this is so criminal. These doctors and nurses that did this should be perp walked. Here, listen to this, guys.
I refuse to take a shot. I am pregnant. I don't want my baby to have that in his system. I refuse. No, I don't want it. I refuse. I refuse. Yes, I can. I'm pregnant. That's not my doctor. All right, I'm not taking it. Y'all, my parents, when they leave you.
Now, here's your choice.
No.
You can take it like an
adult. No. What made her say for me to do this?
Or
crazy?
You can take it like an adult, or we're going to hold you down and give it to you.
I want to wait for my mom to come here.
No, we're not waiting for your mom.
I don't want that.
No.
I don't need it.
I can see your pressured speech.
Because you're trying to give me what I don't need. Please don't touch me.
Well,
because I know you're all against me.
No, we're not.
Because I'm black. Because I'm more. Because I'm more. Yeah. Because I'm MOOR.
All right. We're going to put your two. Okay.
All right.
Put it in the leg. All right. Okay.
So my baby's gonna have that in his system, and I'm gonna.
It's for the baby. It is for the baby.
It's all right.
I'm going to. It's all right. I'm suing.
It's safe. They're
Yeah, I know.
not going to give you something that's not safe.
I know. I'm suing. They're trying to have this in my baby, and they know that what they're doing.
That is okay. So to me,
That is criminal.
that
is
traumatizing.
absolutely has to be.
That's medical rape. That's medical
And there's-
rape. She
Yeah,
said
it really is.
And they did it
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
And there's other cases.
You
here
have the right
listed.
to refuse. I don't know of any standard of any nursing practice. I don't know of any medical practice anywhere where the patient doesn't have the right to refuse.
Yeah.
When did that right ever get taken away?
Well, this is what happens when you dehumanize people in the first place. Once you dehumanize them or make your staff afraid of the unvaccinated, you're doing the same thing they did in Germany with the Holocaust. They're unclean. So they were in their minds, they were trying to make them clean. I don't know any of this. It's just manipulation and fear. It's fear.
Yeah, that was very, I will say from a survivor perspective, that was very evident that you knew the nurses and doctors who hated your ever loving guts. And I mean, there were nurses that were so abusive to me. I had like 30 bruises on my body that were like that big when Huckleberry, when he rescued me and he took pictures, and that there was this clear hatred where you were just surrounded by people who thought that you should die because you were unvaccinated. And that is one of the things where I say that the media and the government is complicit in that, because they they pushed out so much propaganda that they created a hatred for an entire class of people. And to this day, families do not speak to each other because, listen, if y'all got vaccinated family members, try to make up with them because you don't know how long they're going to be here. Like my mother she just believes anything her doctor says, and she's so shot injured and doesn't even realize it. But I would never spend my time arguing with her, even though I tell her. But just you don't. I know on betrayalprojectusa.org, we take all kinds of medical crime stories, including ones about, we've got an intake for the COVID shot. We've got other medical and hospice and specifically COVID protocols as well. And I can tell you that I have interviewed people who are shot injured and whose children are shot injured, or they had somebody die. And many of them really believed that they were doing the right thing for their families. They were so convinced and so manipulated into it, or they were threatened with their job, and they felt they had to make that decision. So one of the reasons we are doing this BPUSA advocacy network and pulling all of these groups together is because we are all medical crime victims. So we got us, this whole week is around learning about all types of medical crimes because we have to stick together. We are equal in that that we're all victims, and we need to work together to get justice. And so that's I truly believe we need to work together to get justice, or we will not see it. Let's hug your vax injured friends. Like, I mean, hug your, understand why people who had loved ones killed by the protocol might be a little agitated because they were, mocked and harmed, and their loved ones were killed for not taking the shot. Let's spend time learning about each other and having empathy for each other's fight. All right. Enough of my sermon.
No, I love that you said that. Over in section 7, there's a few more cases there of bad things that happen to people. But on number 7, which is be prepared, not scared, I have Philippians 4:7, because no matter what, we need to have that peace of mind that comes from God. He is the one who gives us the peace that surpasses all understanding. And that's Philippians 4:7. So I'm going to pray that for you, Gail, and for everybody who listens. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So we can count on God to help us through all of these things and to make us fighters and keep our swords sharp while we're in this spiritual battle. But I just love that Laura has brought to us through the Hospital Insider the I do not consent form, so that we have something that's in written document form that bypasses the ER doctor, goes over his head and into the chart to help you so that none of these things happen to you.
And it can be used in ERs, ORs, ICUs, labor and delivery, surgery centers, nursing homes, any facility where you have a chart.
Cruise ships. Anywhere there's a doctor. I bring it with me if I was going on a cruise.
Oh, definitely. But you wouldn't catch me on a cruise, so.
There's a video below that one if you want to play it. There we go. Just a little bit of the insight that went into it, updating it recently.
Yeah.
She's got an insider dirty nurse who's been inside at the top levels. She knows the system. We all know the system when we're inside of it. You serve papers like that with a courier timed and stamped as a witness, a legal record that they got them. Those things are going straight into the medical record because they have to. And you're going to get access to the chart, and they're going to treat you different because you're a lot different than anybody else they ever had. You're probably the first one to do it that way.
So talk about, a lot of times people will say, oh, well, I had an advance directive and they ignored it. So can you talk a little bit about the difference?
Yeah. Oh, sure. And they ignored it because advance directives aren't to be directing your current consent. That's something that is for end of life decisions. And so they, by law, don't even acknowledge or look at them until you're at that point of being incapacitated, and you need to know whether you're a DNR, if you're for brain apnea testing, all those sorts of things. There actually was nothing prior to the I do not consent form to advocate for your current consent wishes, meaning up to the point you enter the hospital, say for COVID, and you could talk and walk and do all the things up until you're incapacitated. There was nothing saying, like that person we saw on the video who was saying, I don't want a shot. I don't want it. Don't do that to me. A lot of people said that during COVID. They said, don't give me remdesivir. I don't want remdesivir. You could hear them screaming it.
Yeah.
And you learned that your verbal does not leave a paper trail. A verbal refusal is not a legal binding refusal that is that shows evidence of that. You have no proof that that was done. You're just leaving it up to the moral compass of your doctor to actually make a note accurately in your record that they refused or they consented.
So there's and there is history behind this method and this form where it's been used with.
Yeah, there's actually proof of concept is what we call it as an entrepreneur, which is my previous life. I hope to go back to it at some point. But proof of concept has been achieved with the I do not consent form. It's been used in large hospitals from coast to coast, little community hospitals successfully when, as you like to say, Gail, when used as directed.
Yes.
You must follow instructions. You try to make a cake without eggs, or you decide you're going to just not put it in the oven, you get something very different than cake.
Yes.
Even if you have all the ingredients in there, eggs and everything else, you don't cook it at the right temperature. So just follow the instructions to the letter at I do not consent form, and you'll have a good chance of, success, but you won't if you decide to just skip steps.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
You have a better way.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's this easy. You go there, you look, read the instructions first, read the instructions. There's even, she even did a step-by-step video, which is in here with Dr. Margaret. And so you read the instructions, you fill it out. It is very simple to be, she's made it simple. And you fill it out. You don't sign it. You take it to a notary and sign it. And then you make copies, give copies to friends you trust, friends and family that will fight for you. You keep a copy on your phone. You're right. You scan a copy, keep it on your phone because you'll usually have your phone with you. Maybe you put it on your tablet too. And then if you need it, you send it to a courier and tell them that you want that couriered and delivered to the hospital administrator.
Wow, you get a almost an A plus up until this point. You're doing great. I'm playing with you. You're doing great. So what you're going to do, you're going to pick up the phone. Look, I had an emergency appendectomy. I could have done this. This was 25 plus years ago. Was it that long ago? Yeah. Feel old suddenly. And I went to the ER by myself in the middle of the night. And if it's in the middle of the night, because I'm a single mom, so I go to the ER by myself. I need help. I don't have help usually in the middle of the night if you don't have a spouse that can go with you. But I could have done this. I was in the emergency waiting room. I could have gotten my phone, since there's couriers that usually work within a certain restrained hours, right? They're not going to be available at 3 o'clock in the morning, when emergency strikes. But what you could do is get your phone out and record, handing it to the administrator. When you go up to the front desk, you're going to discreetly record that you are giving them your refusals. I can't have these drugs. I can't have these vaccines. And you're going to discreetly record you doing that. Your phone is going to timestamp. That's a record. You can also voice record, and it's a record. It's going to have, you got to think outside the box, right? We tried to think of all the contingencies of what if this is, at 3 o'clock in the morning. It seems like emergencies always happen at these odd hours.
Yeah.
If you have a cell phone, you could do that. So that's how you do that. If it's normal hours, you pick up the phone and you're going to be sitting in the waiting room. You're going to call a courier and say, hey, with your Google Maps and everything, you're going to go find a courier on Google, and you're going to find one, and you're going to have a conversation. I'm at this hospital. I need you to courier it within a half hour to an hour max. Can you get it here? Maybe you got lucky on the first call, and you're going to say, thank you. I will email it to you. Get your phone out. It's in there. Sent.
Yeah.
You're done. It's going to be in writing.
So, and here's what I recommend.
By the way,
when you give your friends and family the copy of it, and you tell them the instructions of how you want, make it easy for them. Make a list of couriers, so they're not panicking looking for it if they need it and it's an emergency. Like,
the reality, though. The reality is that it seems like emergencies never happen like where you think you're going to be in that area. You could be traveling cross country, but you still can do it. Say, I have a hotel room right now, and I have, I tripped and fell, and I think I broke my femur. Okay. I could find a courier because we all have smartphones. We can find a courier in that town. Just, couriers near me. Or put the zip code and courier in your Google search bar or whatever browser. You're going to be able to do this. If I can find a courier in Florida on 4th of July, which I've had to do to help somebody who called the hostage hotline a couple of years ago, it always seems to be it's on a vacation, or, when people or a holiday. You can do it. You just need to ask the right questions. Where's a courier in the zip code? You can find it. And I can do it from Texas to help somebody else.
And now I'm going to tell you a question I get all the time, because there's always, but Gail, what if the doctor doesn't follow it? What if they don't? What if you go in and there's Dr. Mengele and Dr. Joe, Dr. Dexter, and there's a hospital has hired a serial killer, which apparently a lot of them do. They're not picky anymore. Some of them aren't even doctors. I'm not saying Dr. Quach ain't a doctor. I'm just saying he's probably not a doctor. Allegedly, according to the school he went to. So, so let's say you end up with either a Dr. Mengele or a Dr. Larry Curly Moe, and they don't obey it.
So, during COVID, I haven't seen that happen, but because it's such a huge psychological deterrence. And, for theft in a commercial setting, psychological deterrence lowers crime by over 40%. That's statistic fact. Okay. So if somebody isn't motivated, say they are a total psychopath, you finally have some way to have some sort of consequence for the doctor. During COVID, there were no consequences, no recourse for any kind of medical crime because of PrEP. There was no way to prove that you did something intentionally. We talk about willful misconduct, very hard to prove, state of mind, that sort of thing. But when somebody has taken the steps preemptively to say, absolutely, unequivocally, I am saying no, and it's documented. There is, as Tom Redden says, notice is everything. Evidence is everything. This is a direct quote.
Yeah.
It turns a debate into a liability for a hospital.
That's right.
Well, so if you think about it,
litigate. You got the evidence that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you have the evidence.
I'm just,
if it ever has to be litigated, which we hope it doesn't, because we hope there's less psychopaths than there are sociopaths. Sociopaths actually do care about consequence.
Yeah.
I don't want sociopaths treating me, but I'd rather take a sociopath over a psychopath.
Right?
Yeah.
So I just want to make
no motivation. You can't motivate them by the fear of consequences.
Yeah. Go ahead,
And
Nick.
there are, I believe both of those.
I just want to say one of the things too that people should understand when you use the I do not consent form, you have a named advocate in there. You have a documented plan and you have a record in the medical file. So if the doctor comes back and they do not follow, then you have a foundation, you have a record of accountability. And that and that tied in with the fact that you've got a situation where they're like, well, they may be intimidated by that or whatever, but that goes a long way. When you have a record that's documented in the chart, that'll make a sphincter tighten quicker than anything in a
Very quick.
physician.
Very
I like to
quick.
say that too.
Well, I'll just say too, as a doctor, having worked in the hospital a lot, you have a problem in the ICU and the doctor isn't behaving or the nurse isn't behaving, you ask for the charge nurse. They're over all the nurses in the entire ICU. Same with the ER has a charge nurse. The OR has a charge nurse. The labor and delivery has a charge nurse. They don't help you. You can go, if it's working hours, you can go to the director of the ER. You can go to the chief of staff. You can go to the medical director. You just keep moving up the way. I don't recommend that people necessarily go to the patient advocate, because I think that they're more on the legal team of the hospital and on the side of the hospital. But otherwise, so if something happens, and I think Laura can verify this too, the doctor's not covered by malpractice insurance because they were served and they were notified, and it is in the chart. So you're looking at civil and criminal battery.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If people knew their rights.
I was going to say it does show willful misconduct.
Yeah, that's willful.
Yeah. It's willful.
It's not that's not an accident. This is not, I accidentally gave medication that was supposed to be in the bed next to me to the wrong patient. It's not a accidental, I grabbed the wrong vial of this or the wrong amount of that, accidentally forgot my reading glasses and I gave too much of something. This is, you can see it. It's, as we like to say, it's in black and white. It is documented. It's,
and it does protect doctors who are good. So if a doctor gets mad because you're doing it, well, they're a little bit dangerous, not a good doctor. Anyways, if a doctor is a good doctor, they're going to appreciate it because then they ain't going to be made to do stuff. Mick, while we're on this topic, before I play these last 2 or 3 videos on the site, and go through the rest of it, do you want to say something about advocacy while I'm queuing this up?
Oh, sure. Yeah. The thing of it is that, and I had kind of talked to you all about the Deborah Davis story. But one of the reasons why that story hits home is because it is exactly why I'm starting up my LLC. It's Aligned Care Advocacy and Consulting. I realize that people don't just need answers, they need awareness. And so, one of the things that I did is I actually took the Oklahoma Nurse Practice Act, I took the board standards, and I actually outlined that with the I do not consent form. And what I have in Oklahoma is the ability to provide that I do not consent form is now a tool that can be used by advocates because it does provide structure and clarity and protection. And so I just wanted to let people know that this is something that is being utilized out there. It is a protection of documentation, and it also gives a clear assertion of your rights. And because of that, that is something that is real and practical. And I just wanted the people of Oklahoma to be aware of that.
Thank you, Nick. All right, let me see if I can get these. Hold, please. I will get
Oh,
them.
please.
All right. So this one, let's see. This is
It's the same one that's below with Scott Shera. Yeah, the big one. Yes. Showing how Laura was able to help Robert Pazer get out of the hospital after he got one dose of remdesivir, and they came after him with a needle, telling him that he needed a dose.
Let's play this.
And Greta suggested calling Laura Bartlett because she's the expert in hospital rescues. So while I was driving, Laura Bartlett called me. She was getting on a plane. She called me while I was driving, and she sent me the medical directives form via email. And then I said, "Is this that important that I have to get it printed before?" Because I was already driving. And she said, "Yes, this is a critical document. You've got to get him to agree, meaning Robert, to agree to the points on here so you can stop the hospital."
The creator of the document used by Scott Shera was created by an anonymous hospital insider, attorney and nurse who works exclusively with Laura Bartlett, founder, Hospital Hostage Hotline, and Dr. Margaret Aranda, Stanford-trained, anesthesia, and critical care. This insider has over 15 years of hospital administrator experience, which informed not only the creation of the current caregivers and consent form, but also the unique way the hospital doctor is noticed, with proof of delivery.
Yes, and we absolutely promote the I do not consent form, and I'm going to say make sure you go directly to the site. We don't put the form on our website. We put the link to Laura's site on the website for a reason, because you always want, I say it's literally black and white. Her site is black and white. You won't miss it. It's easy to remember. I do not consent form.com. Make sure you are using the right one, because if it's altered, if it's different, you could be putting yourself in more harm. Laura and the insider, the whistleblower insider, the words are very deliberate. The things are very deliberate, the way that they are laid out. It's very carefully, it's not just throwing a bunch of words on a page and pretending like you know something. I would not use anything but Laura's form. And let me tell you something. I trust Laura with my life. That's how much I trust Laura. And I don't trust people, since they tried to kill me. But Laura's dad, don't tell Richard I said that. Laura's brother.
I'm going to tell him.
Laura's brother,
That's
not
okay.
her brother. Laura's brother.
Brothers deserve it.
Yeah, he is very much part of my story. He helped save me. He helped my family advocate for me, and Laura's been helping people advocate for. She's been an advocate. She's helping people advocate. Her hospital hotline saves lives. Her I do not consent form saves lives. Write this number down. It's also on our website. Write that number down. Use the I do not consent form.com so you don't need that number, but use that number if you need that number. That she's the real deal. I have never in this movement of whatever this movement is, this fighting a democide. None of us have ever, I always say this, none of us have ever fought a democide or a Holocaust before. We're new at it like y'all are, right? Like we're just new at it.
Newbies.
We're newbies, but we have something in common, and that is we see a problem. We can't whistle past the death camps. We can't just sit idle and do nothing. And Laura did not have to do this, but she could not sit there and watch people die. So she's the real deal, man. If you want I love people who are selfless and just want to save lives. And I can't say enough that's why I say there's a special place in heaven for Laura, because she has dedicated these years to saving lives.
Well, thank you, Gail. I'm pretty sure everybody on this broadcast would not watch somebody like who's in flames, just sitting there on the subway. We're not those kinds of people. I think we all would have, we've heard that story, right? Or the machete killing on a subway. I just can't. I don't think I'm special. I just think that we all have a heart for people, and if we see somebody suffering, we want to try to alleviate some sort of suffering in the world.
I mean, moral courage.
It shouldn't be.
Moral courage is in short supply.
Yeah,
Laura, you're so humble.
I appreciate all of you.
You are a very humble person, but moral courage is in very short supply. We need more of it. How to advocate justice begins with recognition. You're going to hear it like a gazillion. We're just going to say it and say it and say it because it's true. So, advocacy, yeah. Things you can. I love this. Things you can. Let me just make this bigger. Things you can do to advocate right now. Add your loved one's name and story to the Medical Crime Victims Memorial Wall. So yeah, go get your loved one on the memorial wall because it'll get them on the tribute that we're reading on Sunday. And then there is an intake for coming on our podcast to tell your story as well. And I think everybody deserves to have a platform to tell their stories. In fact, the media, if the media were worth their salt and if they were legitimately honest, they would have a microphone in everybody's face and asking about how the biggest, millions and millions and millions of medical crime victims were murdered. So that shows you they're not. So yeah, do that. We have the proclamation. Maybe somebody in earshot of me can put that link in the different chats where we're live streaming. It's also on our Substack. The proclamation, and it's in Dr. Margaret's Substack. The proclamation. Sign the proclamation for victims of medical crimes to be acknowledged as victims of medical crimes. We went through yesterday how to report. Go watch that. Document and report. Doesn't need to be perfect. If you feel something's wrong, you don't have to prove the crime. We're just trying to prove the pattern so that they have to investigate a pattern. Protocol deaths. Yep, standard of care. There you go, right there. COVID shots, report there. You're going to hear more about that too. On Friday, Julie and Ron are going to talk about the shots and injury and how everybody is actually a victim. And tomorrow you're going to hear about hospice, murder in hospice and being betrayed by hospice by Marsha Joyner. Yeah, there you go. There's a link. I like this. The goal is clear. Create an undeniable pattern that demands investigation and accountability. Recognition is not the end. It is the beginning. When thousands of families, and I say tens or hundreds of thousands, stand together and say this was a crime, the silence breaks because justice starts with recognition. And as always, as you will get in all of the stuff Dr. Margaret writes, you get all of the references and resources. So when people ask me, and you know who you are. No, I'm just kidding. I love you all. But when people ask me, hey, where can I find XYZ? Where can I find this and that? It's probably going to be in Dr. Margaret's Substack because she's done an article on just about everything. I have my notifications turned on for very few Substacks, but hers is one of them because I don't want to miss anything because there's going to be something good in there. When people ask me, hey, what should I do about cancer? Go to Margaret's Substack. Go to the Rebel Patient. What should I do about I'm going to have a baby? Go to Rebel Patient. There's I'm telling you, there's interviews, articles. Follow her on Twitter. Follow her on Substack. Laura, you need to get a Substack with all that extra time you don't have.
I've told her that too.
I get Dr. Margaret to do my homework for me.
That's right. So yeah. So this was a great presentation. I thank you for all the hard work that went into putting this in. I do want to point out to people that tomorrow here's oh, hold please. Tomorrow we have these will all be on our Rumble. They're on Mix Rumble. You can rewatch them, share them on X, Facebook for as long as they let us. It's going to be on Rumble. I'm going to put them. I'm going to take a shot and put them up on YouTube. We'll see. But we talked about reporting medical crimes. We talked about beyond the ER door. Was it murder? A lot of good information today, and tomorrow you're going to get you're going to get educated on hospice and I will tell you. When I read Marsha Joyner's book, Betrayed by Hospice: Stories from the Deathbed, I realized my aunt had been murdered in hospice. I always suspected something wasn't quite right. I could never put my finger on it back in 2018, but I realized it, and so she'll be going on the wall. And then Thursday, just to give you a look ahead, surviving brain death and organ harvesting, Vax murders with Road Warriors Julie and Ron on Friday, and Survivor Saturday and Second Chances on Saturday. And then we're going to do the closing ceremonies on Sunday. Busy week. And that is here. We're going to, do all of that and talk about where we go next. I also want to point out that on our website, in our shop, we do have this one happens to say hospital protocols, but this is Heidi Bond. We always talk about our wonderful Heidi Bond in California that holds this California Betrayal Project USA on X. And she's the one that writes the music for the movement and the songs and stuff like that. Well, this Heidi and her gang out there in Fresno are going to be going to the honor walk for crime victims tomorrow, and they are going to be wearing their shirts. We do have the official shirts on the website. We have medical crimes, hospice. Someone I love was killed by hospice protocol shots, and that. So we have those still on the website. They're going to be wearing those, and I can't wait to see the pictures of them marching. I think they're also wearing them to the Capitol on Friday. So good for them. It's going to be a big group of them. Can't wait. And then we also have people asked where to get these. We have protocols, hospice, medical crimes, and shots. These little you can get those for a little $5 donation on our website, and Donna or Teresa will make them for you and customize them. They are the ones that are creative. I do not have any creativity. So with that, I want to I also want to remind everybody, scan me right here. Scan me and sign the proclamation for the medical victims. Scan it. And go ahead, Laura. The I do not consent. You're muted.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I was looking for the scanner thing.
Oh yeah, scan it
over here. Like I'm pointing at the real project right
there. Laura was a mime in her other in you'd make a great mime. But I appreciate,
You're the clown.
I am. I was going to be a clown. Dr. Margaret, I have to say, it has been your partnership with us has been wonderful, and your support and all of the education. Some of the stuff we wouldn't even know how to do if it wasn't for Dr. Margaret. She just is so giving of her time. And so I appreciate you giving victims a voice and always fighting for us.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. It's all my pleasure. Thank you for multiplying my voice too. You're
Oh, yeah.
awesome. And I love Mick and I love Laura
You guys
too.
are-
Laura and I have been twins ever since we met one another. She was hiding from me, but I found her. I tracked her down. Look at her.
And I do want to close out. Did I close out with? I think this is the video. Though. I'm going to close out with one video, and then we are going to call it a wrap.
Strapped down to the bed, physically and chemically restrained. It wouldn't feed her. The white coat is a veil for state killing.
Yeah, the white coat is a veil for state killing, and we need to end that and make hospitals safe again. We also have that shirt on our website, and coming soon is Widow Warrior and some survivor shirts and shot shirts. We're going to be putting out Stay Out of My Jeans and a couple other shirts. So keep an eye out. All right, y'all. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. And we had a really big crowd joining tonight. So I appreciate that. And we will again see you tomorrow to learn about murder from hospice. Thank you.